Question number 2 in the name of the Honourable David Parker.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of my colleague David Parker to the Prime Minister, does he stand by his statement that, quote, when this government came in, there were predictions that unemployment would rise to over 10%, end quote? If so, in the December 2008 Economic and Fiscal update, what level did Treasury forecast that unemployment would peak at?
Honourable Bill English on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, yes. In early 2009, the New Zealand Institute warned unemployment could rise to over 11%. In answer to the second part of the member's question, the December 2008 Economic and Fiscal update forecast peak unemployment of 6.4%. However, 6 months later, at Budget 2009, once the full implications of the global financial crisis were understood, unemployment was forecast to peak at 7.5%. Fortunately, and partly because of good policy, unemployment did not get that high.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Is he aware that the projections that the New Zealand Institute were relying on to say that there would be a forecast of 10% come from a paper that has been totally discredited because of a basic coding error in a spreadsheet that makes the projections completely wrong?
Honourable
Mr.
Bill
Speaker,
English on behalf of the Prime
I wasn't
Minister.
aware of that because I'm less concerned about the 2008 unemployment forecast than the Labor Party, who seem to be obsessed with trying to defend their terrible economic record.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Point of order, Grant Robertson.
To assist the Minister of Finance, I seek leave to table an article not easily found from dailyfinance.com which says, math in a time of Excel, economists' error undermines influential paper.
The document's been suitably described on the basis that I'm assured that it's not easily found. I will put the leave. Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is not. Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Is it in fact correct that unemployment has been above the Treasury forecast since National took office and the actual performance against forecast has been getting worse and worse?
That's right.
Honourable Bill English on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think it's typical of the Labor Party's obsession with measurement rather than with the real economy that its measure of anything is how it connects to the Treasury forecast. In fact, unemployment is dropping and in a few months will be lower than Australia. And I can remember that member and others spending a number of years attacking the government because unemployment was higher than Australia, and I hope they'll get up and compliment the government and New Zealand businesses and workers on getting unemployment lower than Australia.
Point of order, Grant Robertson.
While it was interesting to hear the Prime Minister's views, he did not in fact address a very specific question.
I invite the member to repeat his question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it in fact correct that unemployment has been above the Treasury forecast since National took office and that actual performance against forecast has been getting worse?
Honourable Bill English on behalf of the Prime Minister.
No, and I don't care what comparison there is with the 2008 unemployment forecast. On planet Labor that matters, but in the rest of the world, 2014 is what matters.
Supplementary question, Jami-Lee Ross.
In 2008, when the New Zealand economy had gone into recession a year before the global financial crisis, what other forecasts did
Can the member just ask his supplementary question without the lead-in? Supplementary question, Jami-Lee Ross.
What other forecasts did Treasury make in their 2008 Economic and Fiscal update when the New Zealand economy had gone into recession a year before the global financial crisis?
Order. I have a point of order from the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, that minister was not responsible for the 2008 estimates. They were for a period before the government.
No, on this occasion I've listened to the question. The question is in order and can be answered by the Minister. Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there were some alarming aspects of the 2008 Economic and Fiscal update. Treasury forecast never-ending fiscal deficits, that under the policies of the previous Labor government, New Zealand would never get into surplus, and it projected that the government debt would reach 50% of GDP by 2020. In fact, it'll be well less than half of that figure if the John Key-led government is able to persist with its sensible policies.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Why are Treasury forecasting that in 2018, 10 years after his government came into office, unemployment will still be higher than when he took office?
Wow.
Honourable Bill English on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, we can always argue about Treasury forecasts, and I often do.
Order.
But the Labor Party, if the Labor Party thinks it's going to win the next election by arguing that it managed the economy perfectly in 2008, then we will win by even more than people think we will now.
Supplementary question, Jami-Lee Ross.
What recent reports has he seen on the outlook for growth and employment in the economy?
Honourable Bill English on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, there's been a lot of reports on this, but clearly, because the Labor Party is more interested in 2008, they won't have read them, so I might have to tell them about what's in them. 66,000 jobs were created in 2013. There are 139,000 more jobs in the economy today than 4 years ago. The PMI index for manufacturing, which has been apparently in crisis, has expanded for 16 consecutive months, and employment in manufacturing expanded in 2013, and we're still waiting for the report on the crisis from the mock select committee that conducted an inquiry into the manufacturing crisis. In its half-year update, Treasury is forecasting growth above 3% and employment growth over 2%.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Does he agree with the Treasury last week, who said, quote, there are not any impediments to the rate of unemployment falling back to levels that existed in the mid-2000s, and if so, why is unemployment forecast to remain higher than the mid-2000s for the remainder of this decade under his government's policy settings?
Honourable
Mr.
Bill English
Speaker,
on behalf of the Prime Minister.
There's a couple of reasons I can think of why unemployment has dropped a bit more slowly than we would all like. One is that the relatively low level in 2008 was built on a debt-funded consumption splurge, which was always unsustainable, and many New Zealanders who were led to believe they had sustainable jobs by the Labor Party in fact didn't. And the other reason is that there was a debt-funded government spending splurge in the years running up to 2008, and that also had an artificial, unsustainable impact on the level of employment. In the next 5 years, we're going to be creating real, sustainable jobs.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
What does he say to the editor of the Waikato Times, who said that Mr Key had, quote, seriously exaggerated his government's accomplishments in recalling what had happened in recent years, given the growth in unemployment in that region, and why will the Prime Minister not just be upfront and honest with New Zealand about unemployment?
Honourable Bill English on behalf of the Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister has never been anything less than upfront and honest about unemployment. The fact is, the conditions for reducing unemployment and faster employment growth now are positive, and one thing that is a big risk to it would be the prospect of the Labor Greens ever getting into government, because they are expressly, transparently and honestly anti-jobs.
Question number 3, Kevin Haig.